might get some of that fucking blue stuff down your neck.
Are we allowed to do this? Are we allowed to advertise? I'm pretty sure we're not at the level yet where we're going to get lawsuits.
Powerade. You do like your blue. You do like your blue sweets and your blue drinks, don't you?
I do. And if it's...
Is it generally raspberry? It's raspberry, isn't it? Generally blue. I don't know why, because raspberries aren't blue.
Raspberries aren't blue. No, they're like a sort of fuchsia. No, I have no idea.
Hyacinth.
I have no idea why. Why?
It's generally blue, though.
Yeah,
Isn't it? Well, strawberry stuff's supposed
this
to
is
be
berry and tropical, despite the fact that nothing in nature is that colour. Yeah.
Well, blueberries are. Well, they're not that blue, are they? Of course. What's it like? Does it hit the spot?
It's delicious.
Oh,
I'm drinking Powerade, by the way. If you can't see, if you're watching it on the podcast,
anybody from Powerade who are watching, he's drinking Powerade.
Yeah, I'll leave it there, and then I don't know, probably breaking some YouTube
Protocol,
advertising protocol. I really do. I have to when I upload these videos, I have to go through something, and there's loads of boxes I just ignore. I'm pretty sure I should be to pay more attention to it.
Is it Wayne's World where they do the whole?
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah,
McDonald's or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's a long time since I've seen that film.
Yeah, but nothing should be that colour and be healthy. So
no.
Whatever. I don't care. Past the point of caring. We get loads of it on the rider, and we just come back from gigs with it with tons of like.
It's weird because we go through the bloody rider for our shows, and like we'd like trim it every 6 months. It's like Gary will come back with the rider. Right, looking at the rider, cut a few corners, save a bit of money, stuff we don't eat, stuff we don't drink. I'm going. We all go. Yeah, what we need is just this, and this. And yeah, every time we come back off tour, you're standing up with a fridge full of flipping.
Yeah, well, it's better than
energy drinks, 20 loaves of bread.
It's better than it used to be. Do you not remember?
Oh, yeah.
It used to be like tubs and tubs of like hummus and things. You know, like just.
I remember the Darkness tour was good. They were good. They were good riders, weren't they? Was it a bag of Doritos and a jar of pesto?
Yeah. Well, that was it.
If you've never tried some Doritos, and they're not Doritos, they were like Tesco tortilla chips, Savor tortilla chips, and a jar of pesto. If you fancy a night in on a Saturday night, you sell a movie, and
I've gone off pesto. Pesto is like I can't eat pesto anymore. I've had bad experiences with pesto. Yeah. Anyway, as usual, we wasted the first few minutes of this podcast talking about.
Oh no, I'm not here for a game of tennis. There's a pesky fly in here.
There is a fly.
There's a fly somewhere. Every time I turn up with this thing to give me a click around here,
one of them electric fly swatters.
Oh yeah, that's not a tennis racket, by the way. It's one of the. It's great fun, these. I think they are anyway.
Crispy fly.
Easily pleased.
So anyway. the Massive Wagons podcast, we talk about music-related stuff and give our perspective as a Z-list band on the on the subjects. And this week we're going to talk about live sound.
Well, live sound, eh? Ooh, there's a touchy subject. It's touchy.
Well,
there's a lot to unpack here.
There is quite a lot.
Excuse me, mate. Can you turn vocals up a bit?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. There's just a lot of things. So basically, like,
where do you start?
It's not new. I mean,
sound at gigs.
Well, no, sound at gigs.
Essentially,
that's been there since the beginning.
But
they're
gigs.
Complaining of the aforementioned sound.
Well,
that is as old as the gigs themselves. You know, as long as gigs have been happening, there's people saying that they weren't happy with the sound.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's two different angles from it. There's obviously the punters angle.
Yeah.
Which we are punters as well. You know, we got to watch gigs.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, occasionally.
And then there's sort of we want to offer, as we generally do in these podcasts, offer our perspective. You know, as a band. So. What was it? Right. What's your take on it? I mean, have you ever been to a gig? Does any gig in your head stand out as you've been to and you've gone, "Oh, that sounded appalling"?
Do you know what, mate? I haven't. I mean, I haven't been to many gigs for a long time. But when we were going to gigs, do you know? I've never really found myself thinking, "God, that sound was crap." I just don't. I'm not entirely sure whether I have the ears for it. Or I just don't care. Or I go and I can hear the song and it sounds right. What I have noticed over the years is when you go and watch bands in pubs, when we used to go and watch them all the time, and you think, that's a great night, this sounded all right in there. But then you start in a band and you play a lot of shows, and then I don't have time to go and watch pub bands and stuff. And then eventually, after 4 or 5 years, you go back to watching pub bands, you realise, Christ, it sounds dreadful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you get used to
you get used to a real quality, don't you?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but as far as shows go, I mean, the only bad sound experiences I've ever really had or thought of were at festivals where it's windy and it's not really the band's.
No.
I remember watching Terrorvision, and I remember watching the Little Angels at Download one year. We were there that year, and I was really looking forward to both those bands. But they both suffered from the whack the microphone
Early on in the day, weren't they?
The wind blowing the sound. It was blowing a gale. It can't be helped, can it? It's not their fault.
That's a real thing. Yeah.
It blows the sound around. One minute it's there, next minute it's whoosh, it's gone, and it's back again. And
well, that's it. I mean, like you kind of said it there, but one of the points I was gonna make was that you get different types of gig goers, don't you? And there's no one's right or wrong. There's no right way to want to watch a gig or out, but you get the people that go. And they're there for the experience. Do you know what I mean? And
the atmosphere.
the atmosphere, and they get, generally bands where they'll, if there's generally the area right in front of the stage, can be sort of dictate the kind of band and the kind of person that's going to come to watch it. So, like, we'll use Airborne as an example. It gets pretty rowdy. First sort of, dozen rows of people, it's if you're in that, you're gonna.
It's safe to say those people don't really care about the sound.
Exactly,
so much.
They're not like getting chucked over the barrier and head banging away, and then they leave and go. You know what? I couldn't really hear the hi-hat.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they don't. They're not really there.
They're not analysing it, are they?
As long as it's sort of pumping, they're not analysing it. But then you get the people that they'll stand at the back and they are listening, and neither way of don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's a right and a wrong way, but they'll have a completely different set of criteria on which they're judging the gig by.
People do go to gigs for different reasons, don't they? Yeah, definitely. And it does sometimes depend on what band it is as well. I mean, you get a band like Airborne, maybe the majority more of the crowd that won't care. You go and watch a band like Blackberry Smoke. We supported Blackberry Smoke at Holmfirth, didn't we? And that wasn't really that crowd, was it? I'd say sort of 70% of the band were more enjoying this to stand and listen, But they're a band that are really. It's a different style of music, isn't it?
It's very organic, and it. You're right. I don't know. I mean, every band's different, but I guess we're talking like we'll get to our perspective, like with us as a band, 'cause I think we're weirdly somewhere in the middle.
Which can be difficult.
Yeah, which makes it hard. But I've been to see gigs before, and I've almost thought like generally proggy kind of bands, So I saw Stephen Wilson. Every time I've seen Stephen Wilson, the sound has been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah,
but you sat down. It's almost like a theatre, thing, and the sound. There is a visual aspect, but it's coming from media rather than the band themselves. What I mean? The band aren't leaping around, throwing shapes. It's foot on the wedge. it's like So it's more like the sound kind of has to be good, and you can tell that they take particular care, meticulous, and and they pick the venues. Like I saw them at the seen them at the Bridgewater Hall in Manchester, which is a state-of-the-art modern venue. System's incredible. Mm-hmm. The balconies all have their own their own mix.
Right, wow.
Which will all be. I'm assuming they'll all be kind of catered for, and it's very kind of. There's no part of that room that isn't getting
the same
provided. Yeah, right. The sound,
It's the same with Joe Bonamassa. He's another man, isn't he? I've watched some videos of him setting his sound up, and he's very meticulous, isn't he? And it's the same style of music, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Kind of the bluesy. It's pay attention music, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the same. It's the same approach to it, where the sound is absolutely paramount.
Yeah.
And you'd think that that surely for a gig that would be the case for every band, but
no ways, no.
It isn't. It really is not.
No, definitely not. It's interesting as well. I was talking to some people about this, and it also makes a difference when you're playing to new people as well. When you're playing to your old school fans who know your songs a lot more, know all the words. When the sound quality maybe isn't as good for whatever reason, we'll get to those reasons, they can fill in the blanks without even realising, which I thought was I saw that, I've seen that comment, and a few people have said it's all right for your fans. They can sing along. They know the songs. So if you know the songs, then you maybe automatically don't realise the sound is as much of a problem. Yeah. Whereas if you're trying to pay attention, you've never seen a band before, you're like, this is just weird.
Yeah, that you know what? I hadn't really considered that. That is a good point.
It's kind of a subliminal thing, isn't it, really? You just sing along or...
Yeah, like fill in the blanks. That's exactly what they do, yeah. You know...
Or you allow a band to get away... I mean, maybe, not as a band, you don't become complacent, I don't think, with your sound, but maybe a lot of hardcore fans let a band maybe subliminally get away with more. Not get away with more, but allow the sound to be not as good... because they've seen you lots of times and they just love the atmosphere it creates. Whereas, you've got to remember that they're... Well, that's what we were saying before. We fall into that middle bracket, don't they, where there are people standing there. We played at the weekend at the depot in Plymouth, and you can tell the people on the floor were all going mad, and then there's a balcony there, and the people on the balcony are clearly there, stood up there because they don't want to leap around. They want to listen to the song, so it's a difficult balance to strike, isn't it?
Yeah, I do... Yeah, well, all right, we'll go on to that then, because, I mean... Well, this was all kind of sparked off. We're talking about this now, really, because there was a fair amount of comments, complaints, I guess, about the sound of that gig in Plymouth, and just sort of want to offer a few things on our side. So basically, the venue staff, fantastic. They were great, very accommodating, great people.
It's a great place.
It was a 500 capacity venue. There's probably about 300 and some people in there. So it's not full, but that's the capacity as a nightclub. So there were people there that couldn't see the stage,
I wouldn't have wanted to get more people in there, really. I mean, there was I mean, if they'd have been stood over, I mean, I'm assuming the 500 would have flushed them right up to the bar, wouldn't
exactly.
it? I mean,
and it would have meant you can't see the band. So it was as full as a gig capacity can really
you
get.
Want to be in there, yeah, I would say so.
So there's parts of that room and many, many rooms where the sound system just cannot hear. I was talking, like I mentioned before, the Bridgewater Hall, Manchester. They've made sure they've got speakers in filling in those dark areas of the room where the main system can't reach.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't exist. That's colossal. There's colossal outlay for venues to do that.
Yeah.
And it gets way more complicated to do that. This was essentially a nightclub, and it's like you've got massive speakers, massive subs at the stage, and that's it. You're getting.
And these places, these little smaller venues, 300-400 cap venues, they're often not built to be venues. They are buildings that have been turned into venues or into nightclubs and are of weird shapes and sizes and have spaces all over the place. You get into your academies and your Apollos, and I know the Apollos used to be theatres or whatever, but they're designed for live entertainment, aren't they? They're a big open space and easy to fill with sound. But some of these smaller venues, we used to play in like pubs. There'd be posts in the middle of the stage or a wall, and it's basically just venues that have popped up. Somebody's put a stage in and they go, right, let's have bands on. Let's put speakers on the wall, and it's just not easy to control the sound in these places, is it?
It is
without deafening everybody.
I honestly think though the vast majority of people understand this, and they know that if they can't see the speakers where they are in the room, then it ain't going to sound fantastic because the sound can't get to you.
No, yeah.
It can only get to you off reflections, off surfaces and whatever. But there are. I do get confused sometimes. Like there was a person.
I might be. I won't confuse you here.
Who they were very very nice and everything, but they had something to say about the sound after the show on Saturday. Outside by the van, sort of collared me. Well, I was like, enjoy it. It's all like, yeah. No, it was all very good. But then they said, the sound wasn't very good. And I saw this person stood on the balcony. Now, for starters, the balcony's above the speakers.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And they were stood along like almost to the side of the stage.
Yeah,
like in behind the speakers.
So not only the speakers were pointing forward and down, the front of the balcony was up here, and the side of the balcony was up here, and the speakers are here facing that way.
And it's like, well, yeah. I mean, that you stood behind the speakers there. Now you could argue, well, why is that even accessible? To people. If that's the case, don't make it so that people can stand there. Now, I would probably suggest that venues do pay a little bit more attention to that, and maybe advise with a thing here. If you stood behind the speakers, because people don't think like that. They just think,
they don't know, do they? People punters don't know, do they?
They don't.
It's they expect to go and be able to see and hear everything, but yeah, the smaller venues around the country, they're odd places, aren't they? They're kind of thrown together a bit, aren't they?
And balconies are terrible for what it does to a sound. If you stood at different parts of the room, especially under a balcony, it's weird what happens to sound. It can sound all right in one place and then awful or completely gone in another place. You get this phase cancellation and all kinds of stuff. But I think the bottom line is you've just got to know, just accept sometimes that venues aren't cut out, and it's not about your sound guy not knowing what they're doing or girl not knowing what they're doing.
No, definitely not. I mean, that is a real unfair judgment to make, I think. Especially with established bands. We know a lot of sound guys, and there is we don't do sound, but we have learned so much about the sound game. Since especially getting Gary on board, but what's involved and just how hard it is. It isn't a case of can you turn. I can't hear his vocals. Can you turn his vocals up? You just can't do these things. The frequencies, all the instruments are competing for different frequencies, and Gary said, if I'd have turned everything up so everybody in the room could hear properly, you'd have absolutely deafened the people in the front.
Yeah,
and you do not want to do that. You don't want to be damaging. It's a serious game. Yeah. Turning them speakers up. You're blowing people's eardrums. You will do serious damage to people if you are not careful.
It's happened in the past.
It has, yeah.
And it's mortifying knowing people have come to watch your gigs and now they've got permanent
ear problems,
permanent, lifelong.
You just can't
physical defects.
And if a few people are going to suffer for sound quality, then that's unfortunately the preferable outcome than bloody hurting people's ears.
Yeah, that is a thing. But again, it's such a tricky one because it's like you shouldn't have to expect to have working knowledge of how sound systems work. If you buy a ticket to go and watch a gig, it's not an unreasonable assumption that you're going to be able to hear things.
Yeah.
However, maybe this is on us a little bit because we booked, and we're booking into smaller rooms really that maybe aren't catered for a band like us. I've kind of forced myself to kind of ask that question really. So, what the biggest problem is when you get just someone playing drums in a room. The sound. Forget microphones, just the sound of someone playing a drum kit in a room, and it's bouncing off everywhere. Now, instantly, before you're adding guitar amplifiers, bass, vocals,
backing vocals,
cowbells into the equation, it's like, you're already, this is the threshold of what you're dealing with. Yeah. Just the drum volume. There was no mics on in Plymouth. There'd have been absolutely no drum mics on the go. Certainly no snare drum. There might have been kick, but other than that, there won't have been anything else. No. It was just that in the room. Now, you can't turn a drum kit down at that point. It's
you
just
can't.
That is as loud as everything else needs to compete with.
Yeah, yeah.
And
well, I'll interrupt you there a little bit. We played Rockpalast in Germany, and the place, the venue is in the middle of a village, like a little town, and it's kind of like in amongst some houses, and it's all really well soundproofed and everything. But you have a strict decibel limit. What was the decibel limit? Was it 98 or something?
No, it was less than that. I think it was 92? Like 95 or something. 95.
Anyway, that's not for a rock band, not particularly loud. Where we were sound checking, and Alex, what was Alex? 112 dBs? 114 dBs.
Without anything else going on.
With no drum mics on.
No.
With nothing else on, just the drums was 114 decibels. Now that is astronomically loud. And so Alex, unfortunately, had to do his very best to rein his drums in. He had to try and play with the same vigour and the same passion and the same everything but play his drums half as hard. I take my hat off to him. Like, I don't know, that must be so difficult. It really must.
He's well, I mean, you're dealing with that as well. I mean, thankfully in the UK, you don't really have to deal with that. It's very much a European thing, unless it's an outside festival. But venues in the UK are generally pretty lenient with the sound. It's not a thing. But yeah, that is it's a the sound of a rock drummer playing is huge, and that's what made life difficult at gigs like Plymouth, because then, in order to turn the guitars and the vocals up to the level that they really need to be heard everywhere above the drums, there are some parts of the room that are going to get blasted with that, just so that other parts of the room can hear it as well.
Yeah.
So what you really just have to do in those situations is just find the best place to stand in the room.
Get there early.
I mean, if you don't know the venue, regular gig goers kind of pick these things up in the sound's always good here. And if all else fails, go stand by the sound engineer.
Well, it's difficult. It's difficult as well. Is when you're playing like the big rooms around the country, like the academies, like the Apollos or the Ritz at Manchester, or Holmfirth Picturedrome. Those venues have big touring bands in and out of them every single week, and anybody who's a sound man or a band, their reputation for sound of that venue goes before them, doesn't it? It's universally known that this place is brilliant for sound, that place is awful for sound. You need to do that in there, and it's the same for everybody. But there are that many small venues. It's hard to build up an insider knowledge on. You just haven't played them all. You know what I mean? You pick it up as you go along. Gary will go, right, well, we played there and that was awful. That was hard work, that room. Right, well, next time, if we ever go there again, I'll remember we need to do this or bring that, or we'll not go there again because that was too difficult for our band. Or unless you're going to start, if you've never played a certain small venue before, unless you're going to start emailing bands that have played there before, you're not going to know what to expect when you turn up, are you?
No. Well, in the instance of Plymouth, I don't think they have many bands on, full stop. I think it is primarily a nightclub.
Yeah.
Which, it happens. And we're not bashing the venue here because they were great. They were nothing but great to us. But yeah, there's loads of others very, very similar. And yeah, it's just hard, Another thing though is like when people feel a kind of feeling hard done by in the moment, and then they rush up to the crew, a member of crew, whether that be the person selling the merch or the
that's what I'd blame.
or the sound engineer themselves, and
good luck with that.
Tell them to do this, make changes. That's almost never going to end.
You're talking to a guy. Unless you are a sound guy, let's say you drive a wagon. You're talking to Gary. You're talking to a guy who has been doing it for 15, 20 years, and he has been around the globe with some massive bands and played in the biggest festivals. Done the sound at the biggest festivals in the world, in arenas, in pubs. You are talking to a man who knows the far end of a fart about sound. So I know it's difficult. It's difficult to sort of resist the temptation to go and say, "Can you turn the vocals up a bit?" Maybe it depends how you approach it and who you're talking to and what sort of night. You got to remember, this guy's working really hard. He's been working all day, really hard, And the last thing he wants to hear is, "Can you turn the vocals up, mate?" I'm gonna be straight honest with you. It's just not. It doesn't work, does it? So if you get ignored or you get told to mind your own business, then you take that chance, don't you?
Yeah, we're not, and this isn't just unique to our guy.
No.
That's universal. No one.
I guarantee that guy is working really hard to give everybody. We worked with Gary, and we worked with all our crew for a good reason for so long, because we trust them and know that 99% of the time it's amazing, and you get that 1% of the time it's down to other outside factors like venues or the unknown or
that, and also it really is. I don't think there's ever been an occasion where, in fact, no, there has never been an occasion at all where the feedback you get is more negative than positive. Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's like it might be you can't. It's impossible to talk to absolutely everyone who ever went, or do a survey or out like that. Were you satisfied with the sound? But I always make a point of asking people if I'm talking to people after the show, what was the sound like? Like that. And almost every time, it's like, you got it great. They've got almost like they weren't even. This was sort of surprised to be asked it. Well, yeah.
How was the sound? I
don't know.
Do it
It
without
was,
realizing. Yeah, and I asked at Plymouth, and a lot of people were like banging, absolutely great show, loved it, and you just notice that the people that did have a complaint or weren't happy with the sound were the people that happened to be stood in those hard to reach areas, So, and that's just something that's just out of our control, really. But the majority of people were really, really positive, and that's really nice to hear. Like,
yeah, and that's it. You have to take it away. If at any point it's almost universally bad, then it's like, oh, hang on a minute. Well, something's up here.
I'll give you a tip, which you probably already know. But if you want a good place to stand at a gig, go and stand next to the sound man.
Yeah,
because he don't move. Generally, he's sat there and he can't have ears all around the room. I know one or two sound men that walk around the room maybe with an iPad, but it's not practical really when dealing with a band like us, and you've got a lot going on. He has to sit down and concentrate on what he's doing. But that where he is sat will be the best sound in the room. So go and stand behind him.
But it'll definitely do that.
Don't put your drink on his desk either.
In sound check. Definitely have a walk around the room and hear for the dead spots. I mean, you can generally tell.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, when it's so packed, you can't. You can't
always
be
do
walking
that.
around like you can't do that. But yeah, just use. It's not patronising or anything, but yeah, use common sense and just be like, well, I'm in front of the speakers here. I'm generally going, if the sound's going to be good anywhere, it's going to be here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are limitations that are just completely unavoidable. Like, for instance, the drums in small rooms, unless you're going to ask your drummer to play differently.
Yeah.
Which
feather dusters
it's just not that. No one wants that really in a rock band. Can your drummer not hit that hard? So, really.
But yeah, I was shocked when we started getting into it, sound and stuff over the years, and talking to Gary about how things work. I was staggered how many variables around, how much stuff there is that changes and goes wrong every gig, and like you just think, oh, you turn up, turn it on, get a great balance, and away you go. But it's so technical. Oh,
there's so much
unbelievable,
so much to it, and I do get defensive when you do get comments like and they go, oh, suck your sound guy or whatever, and you've had that kind of stuff for years, from back in the early days, that people have always got something to say, and it's just like, you know what, sometimes you just want to go get fucked, really,
Yeah, well, you do.
Don't come up to me and say that. That's never a good thing. I would never say that really to.
I
wouldn't say that to anyone.
No, it wouldn't work in any other job, would it? Really, you wouldn't stand for that, would you?
Well, even then, even in this job, if I went to watch a band as a punter, and then to go up to a band member and say that,
"Oi, Bose," sound was crap.
I would you just don't do it. It's not cool. Constructive feedback is completely more than welcome, even if it's constructive criticism.
Well, that's why we're asking it. That's why you're asking
exactly. And even if it is negative, that's totally fine. Big boys, we can take it, but don't. There needs to be a constructive,
an understanding, don't there? That it's
that does, and yeah, just to re-emphasize that this isn't a common occurrence at all. We get nothing but positive things the vast majority of the time. But yeah, there's just a few things to think about next time you're at a gig, and maybe you're thinking the sound could be better.
Turn the cymbals up. That's another thing before your minute runs out. That was another thing, wasn't it? We got to the venue. Dave's playing the drums because we had Dave standing in for us, Dave Steen, and his cymbals were too loud.
Yeah.
And Gary couldn't do anything with it. It's just too loud. So we had to tape up the cymbals.
Yeah.
Put bodge tape on
the underside of the cymbals covered in duct tape.
To deaden the cymbals. Now they're a lot quieter and easier to control, but they suddenly don't sound as much like cymbals.
No.
So it's like
sounds like you're in a
bin lid.
Yeah, bin lid. Yeah.
But it's that compromise that if he'd have left, he hadn't have taped him up, you wouldn't have heard anything, and I'd have been deaf, you'd have been deaf.
Yeah.
These cymbals, It's difficult, very, very difficult.
It is difficult. It is difficult. Maybe because we so easily filled this half an hour, maybe we need a part 2.
Maybe we should get Gary on.
Yeah, maybe we should. Bloody hell, we'll need a few hours for that one.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get Gary on. I think he'd be.
Yeah, he'd love it, wouldn't
Yeah. Someone did call him a tosspot though at the weekend, which was a great source of amusement.
They're obviously a great judge of character.
Tosspot. Anyway, right, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
See you next week.
See you next week, I hope.
Please stay